There is a type of person who never wins, not because they lack talent, not because they lack drive, but because they reveal too much. They show their hand before the game is over. They speak when silence would have saved them. They trust when the room has not yet earned that trust. Machiavelli watched these people fall again and again. He studied them the way a surgeon studies a wound, not with cruelty, but with precision. And what he wrote in The Prince was not a guide for tyrants. It was a survival manual for anyone willing to see the world as it actually is. You clicked this video because something inside you already suspects it. The world does not reward the loudest voice. It rewards the most strategic one. And strategy, at its core, requires knowing what to hide. Most people were taught that openness is a virtue, that honesty is always the best policy, that vulnerability builds connection. And in some relationships, in some moments, that is absolutely true. But Machiavelli was not writing about those moments. He was writing about the arena, the workplace, the negotiation table, the social hierarchy, the long game of ambition. In those spaces, the rules are different, and the people who refuse to learn those rules become the ones who wonder why they keep losing. Today, we are going to go through 10 things you must hide if you want to get ahead of 99% of people. These are not tricks. They are not shortcuts. They are observations. Machiavelli recorded 500 years ago in the courts and city-states of Renaissance Italy. And they are patterns that modern behavioral science has since studied, named, and confirmed. He did not have the clinical terminology, but he had the clarity. And by the end of this video, you will understand why the most powerful people in any room are almost always the quietest ones. Let us start with the most dangerous thing you can reveal to anyone in a competitive environment. Number 1. Hide your next move. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who announces his intentions in advance gives his enemies time to prepare. This is not just political advice. It is a psychological law. When you tell people what you are about to do, you hand them the ability to block you, to undermine you, or to steal the credit before you get there. Consider a composite pattern observed repeatedly in organizational psychology. The profile of the ambitious professional who announces every plan before execution. They share their ideas in meetings before those ideas are fully formed. They tell colleagues about the promotion they are going for. They post about the business they are launching before it has made a single dollar. And what happens? The idea gets picked apart before it has a chance to breathe. A senior colleague quietly pursues the same promotion. The business announcement attracts criticism that kills the momentum before it begins. Machiavelli called this one of the most common and most fatal mistakes a person can make. He wrote that the lion and the fox must coexist in the same person. The lion faces danger openly, but the fox avoids traps. Announcing your next move is how you walk straight into the trap that someone else has already prepared for you. The fix is simple but uncomfortable for most people. Finish things before you announce them. Let your results speak before your intentions do. The world rewards completion, not intention. There is something else worth noting about announcing moves too early. It is not just that others block you. The announcement itself drains energy that should go into execution. Research on goal intention and social disclosure shows that sharing goals publicly before achieving them makes people statistically less likely to follow through. The announcement substitutes for the action. Silence is not secrecy for its own sake. Silence is fuel. Number 2, hide your true intentions. This one is related, but it goes deeper. Your next move is what you are about to do. Your true intentions are why you are doing it, and those two things must be protected separately. Machiavelli was ruthlessly clear about this. He wrote that a wise ruler must be a great deceiver and a great hypocrite, because men are so simple and so ready to obey the present necessity that the deceiver will always find someone to deceive. Now, before you recoil from that language, understand what he was actually saying. He was not encouraging cruelty. He was describing reality. People constantly project their own motivations onto others. If you reveal that your true intention is advancement, power, or financial gain, you will be judged for it, even by people who want the exact same things. The social game demands that you frame your intentions in terms of collective benefit, even when the drive is personal. Think about any successful negotiation you have ever witnessed. The person who wins is almost never the one who said, "I want this because it benefits me." They are the person who framed their goals as aligned with the other side. Hiding your true intentions is not lying. It is strategic framing. And Machiavelli believed it was non-negotiable for anyone who wanted to operate at the highest level. Number 3. Hide your weaknesses. Every person has them. Machiavelli knew this. What separated the powerful from the vulnerable in his analysis was not the absence of weakness, but the discipline to conceal it. Here is the psychology behind this. When you reveal a weakness in a competitive environment, you are not being relatable. You are handing someone a weapon. Modern research on social dominance confirms what Machiavelli observed intuitively. People who display weakness in hierarchical settings are more likely to be passed over, undermined, and taken advantage of. This is not because humans are inherently evil. It is because the brain is wired to assess threat and opportunity constantly. A revealed weakness registers as an opportunity to others, whether they are conscious of it or not. Consider a pattern that behavioral researchers call the vulnerability trap. Picture the new manager who, in an attempt to seem approachable, admits to the team that they feel overwhelmed by the new responsibilities. They believe this will build trust. What it builds instead is doubt. The team begins to question the manager's competence. Certain members begin testing boundaries. The admission that was meant to humanize them instead destabilizes their authority. Machiavelli did not say you should pretend to be perfect. He said you should work on your weaknesses in private and present your strengths in public. That is the distinction. The arena rewards preparation, not confession. Number 4. Hide your full resources. This one surprises people. Most assume that showing your strength, your money, your connections, your capabilities. Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The alchemist's path gives you drills, young-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. Will earn you respect. Machiavelli argued the opposite. He wrote that displaying your full power invites challenge from those who want to take it and creates envy in those who cannot match it. There is a principle that modern strategic theory calls information asymmetry. Though Machiavelli described the same dynamic in different language 5 centuries earlier, the person who knows more about the other side than the other side knows about them holds the dominant position. When you reveal your full resources, your network, your savings, your skills, your options, you eliminate that asymmetry. You give others the ability to calibrate exactly how much they need to offer you, how hard they need to work to compete with you, and where your ceiling is. The wealthiest individuals in any culture tend to be the least visible. The most connected people in any industry rarely advertise their full network. This is not accidental. Machiavelli described it as the discipline of restraint. The ability to hold back not because you are weak, but because full revelation serves no strategic purpose. Here is something worth sitting with. The most dangerous version of this mistake is not showing your money or your connections. It is showing your options at the wrong moment. Modern negotiation theory actually confirms that having strong alternatives, what negotiators call a BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, is a primary source of leverage. Machiavelli would not have disagreed. What he warned against was revealing those options before the other side is committed. Show your hand too early, and the other person stops trying to win you over and starts trying to lock you in before you can use those alternatives. The options are the power. The timing of revealing them is the strategy. And now we cross into territory most people find hardest to control, because the next 5 things are not strategic mistakes. They are emotional ones. And emotional concealment is a different kind of discipline entirely. Number 5, hide your resentments. This is where Machiavelli's thinking becomes almost therapeutic. He observed that the open expression of resentment is one of the most self-destructive behaviors a person can engage in, not just in a moral sense, in a purely strategic one. When you express resentment openly, 3 things happen simultaneously. First, you signal to others that you have been hurt, which reveals a vulnerability. Second, you create an enemy out of someone who might otherwise have remained neutral. Third, you invest your own emotional energy into a conflict that drains you while potentially empowering the other person. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must never make an enemy unnecessarily, and must never let his enemies know the true depth of his feelings toward them. This is not about suppressing your emotions internally. It is about the strategic management of what you express externally. The profile of the person who publicly vents resentment in a professional context is well documented in organizational behavior research. They become known as difficult, unstable, or unprofessional. Their complaints, even when valid, lose credibility because they are delivered with emotional charge. Meanwhile, the person they resent often emerges looking calm and composed by comparison. Machiavelli would have recognized this pattern immediately. He called it giving your enemy a free victory. Number 6, hide your desperation. Need is the most powerful signal you can send to someone who wants leverage over you. Machiavelli understood that the person who needs the deal, needs the approval, needs the relationship, is always at a disadvantage in any negotiation. And he went further. He argued that even when you are desperate, the discipline to appear otherwise is what preserves your position. This is not about deception in the harmful sense. It is about the fundamental psychology of perceived value. When you radiate desperation, the other person's unconscious brain immediately recalibrates your worth downward. Job candidates who seem desperate get lower offers. Business owners who seem financially stressed get worse terms from suppliers. People who seem emotionally desperate in relationships attract exactly the kind of partners who will exploit that quality. When one party signals a high need for the outcome, the other party almost automatically increases their demands. This is not always conscious. It is an instinctual response to perceived leverage. Machiavelli wrote that the appearance of self-sufficiency is itself a form of power. You do not have to actually be indifferent. You have to appear capable of walking away. Machiavelli illustrated this through rulers he observed in the Italian city-states. Those who arrived at negotiating tables having broadcast their financial strain consistently left with the worst terms. Those who projected sufficiency, regardless of what was happening behind closed doors, preserved their position long enough to recover. He called composure under pressure the most underrated instrument of statecraft. Number 7, hide your intellectual vanity. This one requires nuance. Machiavelli was not anti-intellectual. He was deeply learned and considered strategic thinking the highest form of intelligence. In The Prince, he actually argued that a ruler must be seen as wise and must surround himself with capable advisors. He valued intelligence profoundly. What he warned against was something more specific, the performance of superiority, the habit of making those above you feel diminished by your knowledge. His counsel was not to appear incompetent. It was to never wound the ego of the powerful with your capability. A skilled counselor, he wrote, should speak truth to power, but only when asked, and only in ways the prince can hear. The advisor who volunteers unsolicited corrections, who demonstrates brilliance at the expense of the room, who makes the most powerful person present feel foolish, does not keep their position for long. Modern social psychology has since documented this pattern. Researchers call it the backlash effect, where individuals who demonstrate expertise in settings where others feel diminished by it become targets for quiet undermining. The whisper campaign, the withheld information, the small acts of sabotage almost impossible to trace. Machiavelli did not use that term, but he mapped the behavior with precision centuries earlier. The practical takeaway: do not hide what you know. Hide how much you enjoy knowing it more than the people around you. Intelligence deployed with humility builds loyalty. Intelligence deployed as dominance builds resentment. And resentment, Machiavelli observed, is the most patient enemy you will ever make. Number 8, hide your timeline. Impatience is a form of weakness. Machiavelli wrote that patience is the most underrated political virtue because the person who is willing to wait can always outlast the person who cannot. And one of the most powerful ways to project patience is to never reveal your timeline. When you tell someone when you need something by, you give them a lever they can pull at will. The contractor who knows your renovation must be done before your wedding will find a way to charge you more in the final week. The seller who knows you have already bought furniture for the house will negotiate harder in the final stages. The employer who knows you are about to run out of savings will offer less. The behavioral pattern here is called deadline exploitation, and it appears in virtually every documented category of negotiation. Machiavelli understood this intuitively. He counseled that the strategic person appears to have unlimited time, even when they do not, because the appearance of patience changes the entire dynamic of any transaction. This is also true in interpersonal relationships. The person who needs an answer now consistently gets less than the person who appears content to wait. Urgency transfers power to the other side. Patience holds it for yourself. And Machiavelli considered the cultivation of visible patience one of the rarest and most undervalued disciplines in all of human strategy. Number 9. Hide your admiration for your rivals. This one is counterintuitive, but Machiavelli was explicit about it. He wrote that openly admiring a rival elevates them at your own expense, both in the eyes of others and in your own psychological orientation toward the competition. In a status-based hierarchy, which is to say every human social structure ever documented, the act of public praise for a rival sends a signal to every observer. It says that you consider this person above you. Even when admiration is genuine, the strategic expression of it must be carefully managed. Think about how the most dominant figures in any competitive field speak about their rivals. They are respectful, but measured. They acknowledge without elevating. They speak about competitors as peers at best, never as superiors. This is not arrogance. This is strategic positioning. Machiavelli went further. He argued that privately studying your rivals in depth, understanding their strengths, learning from their methods, was not only acceptable, but necessary. The key distinction he drew was between internal processing and external expression. Learn from your rivals privately. Promote them publicly, only when it serves your own strategic purpose. Never let your genuine admiration become visible weakness in a competitive field. There is an additional layer worth considering here. When admiration becomes a consistent public posture toward a rival, it can subtly shape your own competitive orientation over time, nudging you toward deference in small decisions you may not consciously notice. Machiavelli's concern was primarily the status signal it sends outward, but the internal effect is worth being aware of as well. Whether or not the science fully bears out the mechanism, the strategic principle holds. Admiration belongs in your private study, not in your public conduct. Number 10. Hide your fear. Machiavelli wrote one of the most analyzed lines in political philosophy. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. What most people miss is what came immediately after. He warned that while fear is preferable to love as a foundation of power, hatred is catastrophic. A prince who is feared but not hated can hold power indefinitely. One who inspires hatred, even while projecting strength, plants the seeds of his own destruction. It was a precise calibration, not a license for intimidation. Project strength. Never make the people at large your enemy, and never display the fear that invites others to test whether your strength is real. He called visible fear the single fastest way to lose everything. This is not a call for recklessness. Machiavelli was not describing the absence of fear. He was describing the mastery of its expression. Fear is a natural and intelligent response to danger. The question is whether you allow it to show in environments where showing it will cost you. The psychological research on this is consistent across cultures and contexts. Individuals who display visible fear in social, professional, and competitive settings are significantly more likely to be targeted. Predatory behavior, whether in corporate hierarchies, social dynamics, or literal physical environments, is triggered by signals of vulnerability, and fear is the most readable of all vulnerability signals. Consider the composite behavioral profile of the individual who enters a high-stakes negotiation visibly anxious. Their voice changes, their body language closes, they concede earlier and concede more, not because their position is weaker, but because they have already communicated through their physiology that they believe it is. Machiavelli would have recognized this as a strategic catastrophe. The inner experience of fear is human. The outer expression of it is a choice. Now we arrive at the hardest part of this conversation, and I want to be honest with you about it. Everything we have covered today is real. It is grounded in Machiavelli's documented philosophy, in behavioral research, in observable patterns of human interaction. But carrying these principles comes with a cost that Machiavelli himself acknowledged, and that most modern interpretations of his work conveniently leave out. The mask is heavy. Concealment is not a natural state for human beings. We are wired for connection, and genuine connection requires some degree of openness. When you practice the discipline of strategic concealment in every area of your life, in every relationship, at every moment, you risk something Machiavelli warned about with unusual candor for a man of his reputation. He called it the loneliness of the strategist, and he wrote about it not as a theoretical risk, but as a pattern he had watched destroy some of the most capable people he had ever observed up close. He wrote that the prince who trusts no one will eventually find himself trusted by no one. There is a psychological cost to permanent vigilance, a price paid in isolation, in the erosion of genuine intimacy, in the slow replacement of authentic selfhood with a managed persona. Machiavelli saw this in the princes he studied. Some of the most strategically brilliant rulers he documented ended their lives surrounded by people who feared them and nobody who actually knew them. Consider the composite profile of the individual who internalizes these 10 principles completely and applies them without discrimination in every conversation, every relationship, every private moment. What happens over time is not power. It is a kind of psychological amputation. The strategic self grows stronger. The authentic self atrophies. And at some point, the person looks around and realizes they have won every room they ever entered and felt nothing in any of them. Machiavelli documented this as a warning, not a celebration. The mask must be worn in the arena. The man who cannot remove it at home has not mastered the game. He has been consumed by it. So here is my honest take, and I will not pretend it is a simple one. These 10 principles are not a way of life. They are a set of tools, tools that belong in specific contexts: professional competition, high-stakes negotiation, environments where power dynamics are real and consequences are significant. They do not belong in your deepest relationships. They do not belong in the spaces where you go to be a full human being. The mistake that most people make when they encounter Machiavellian thinking is binary. They either dismiss it entirely as immoral and impractical, or they apply it to everything and everyone and end up empty. Neither extreme serves you. The person who gets ahead of 99% of people is not the person who hides everything from everyone all the time. It is the person who knows the difference between the arena and the home, who can be strategic in the spaces that require it and genuinely open in the spaces that deserve it, who has the self-awareness to choose, deliberately, what to reveal and what to protect, and the wisdom to know which is which. Machiavelli wrote The Prince as a practical document, not a moral one. He was describing power as it actually operates, not as we wish it would. And there is a profound kind of respect in that honesty, a refusal to lie to his reader about the nature of the game. You now understand the game better than 99% of the people around you. The question Machiavelli would ask you is the same one he asked every prince who sat across from him. Now that you know, what are you going to do with it? Because knowing without acting is just another form of hiding. And the one thing Machiavelli never counseled anyone to hide was the decision itself. That answer belongs entirely to you. But before you figure it out, I want to know what you think. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these 10 things you find hardest to hide. Is it your fear, your next move, your resentments, or something else entirely? I read every single comment, and your answer might make it into a future video. If this video added something to the way you see the world, hit the like button. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com.